Hey there, special educators. Welcome to Autism Academy 360, a podcast to making your job as special education teachers easier. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Abby, a behavior specialist. And together, we have over 25 years of special education experience.
And I'm a veteran autism teacher. We both are passionate about empowering you with practical teaching strategies and actionable tips and tricks that will help you thrive in your role.
Whether you're a seasoned educator looking for fresh insights, a newbie navigating your first classroom, or a parent of a neurodivergent child, this podcast is your go-to resource for all things autism.
So let's get started with today's episode.
Hey, it's Abby, and we are back with another episode, but this time it's going to be a little bit different. I usually am here to talk about behavior, but there is something that I have been really interested that I really don't know a lot about. So I have invited Ashley Bird on, and she is an SLP, and she is going to talk with us all about Gestalt language processors today. So hi, Ashley. It's so good to have you here.
Hi, Abby. I am so excited to be here and talk about Gestalts. I could talk about it all day long, so I will try to be short and sweet.
Can you just share a little bit about yourself for everyone listening?
I am a speech-language pathologist. I have been working in a self-contained classroom for the last 10 years. Prior to that, I worked in early intervention, and I also have a couple private clients on the side.
Awesome. And Ashley and I actually met through a baby class, which is funny, and then our professional lives overlapped. So it's been fun getting to know Ashley. All right. So can you just break it down? What actually is a Gestalt language processor for anyone who hasn't even heard that word before?
Okay, so a Gestalt language processor is someone who learns language by acquiring chunks or phrases of language or even media as a whole rather than breaking them down into individual words. So it's basically the opposite of how we typically think of acquiring language.
Okay. All right. And so it is a lot. It's so interesting to think about because I am definitely new to this too, but I'm just trying to, learn more. So what are some common characteristics of children that you'd have in your classroom that are Gestalt language processors?
So you might have a child who has a lot of jargon or unintelligible long strings of language. Those kids that are going up to you and they're just kind of rambling on. You can hear the intonation going up and down. You might pick up a couple words, but you're like, I feel like there's language in there, but I don't know what he's saying. They're most likely using a long script. Musical, they're probably drawn to music. They might use media clips. So those kids that go to YouTube and they want to play that same intro or the same part of a show over and over, there is a good chance they're trying to communicate something to us. Rich intonation, sing-song rhythm, lots of single stuck words. That's because they've been getting the wrong therapy. So they have lots of stuck words. That's a whole nother conversation. But the most obvious is repeating phrases that they've heard from another person or a show.
Okay, so when they're repeating these, they're not just repeating them to repeat them. They're repeating them to have meaning and to communicate something.
Absolutely. There's a chance they're saying it for their own self-soothing, but there is a larger chance that they are trying to communicate something to us, and it's not obvious. The words aren't literal sometimes. The thing about Gestalt language processing is it ties an emotion to the words. So they're more so communicating the emotion than the words.
Interesting. Okay, so that would be really hard, I think, to figure out what they are conveying. So what are some strategies that you could give to us, like to figure out what they're meaning? Because I'm just thinking if they're saying something totally that doesn't seem like it quote unquote makes sense to us, right? Because it's tied to an emotion and they're trying to convey that they feel that emotion now. How do we access that or break that barrier so we can understand what they're trying to communicate?
So the best way is to reach out to your team and collaborate. So speech, special education teacher, and parents, and keeping a log of these phrases. There's actually a database that people have created of different scripts to try to see where they come from. So it does take some detective work.
A database for a bunch of different kids?
Oh, yeah, it's just a whole bunch of scripts, and it kind of cites where the script came from.
Oh, okay. So it wouldn't necessarily pair the emotion because that's
Right.
different for everyone. It would say this script came from this episode
Yes.
and go back and kind of figure it out from there.
Yep.
Oh, that would be really helpful. So how is this different than scripting or echolalia?
So scripting and echolalia is a part of Gestalt language processing. There are several stages that a GLP goes through. However, it's not linear. They don't do like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. They kind of go back and forth. So stage 1 is when they're using a direct script to communicate. So it is a stepping stone for the later stages of the natural language acquisition.
Okay. So when you have a student who has a device, which I'm thinking a lot of these kids do, are they also using these phrases on their device too?
They very well could be, depending on the speech path working with them. Sometimes they might have whole phrases programmed into their device and then broken down into what we call mitigated scripts, where we kind of mix and match our scripts. Otherwise, we don't have to program the whole scripts. They just continue to use their normal single buttons to communicate.
Okay. And as an educator, should we be correcting them so that they can communicate with people around them, or should we try to understand what they're saying and like we change our approach?
Absolutely. So before I learned about this, there are so many times, and I cringe just thinking back, like I'd hear a kid and I'd say, turn off the radio, turn off the show. We're not watching that right now. But then I learned they were trying to communicate something with me. So the most important is not to distinguish the script and instead acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't know what they're saying, just say, you could repeat it back to them. Just say, yeah. Just acknowledge it in some way so they feel heard is the most important thing to do.
So I think, behaviorally that could really help too. If I just think of how frustrated I would be if I was trying to communicate something or say something and people were just telling me to stop, and then if it was just acknowledged, I could possibly move on a little bit easier. So that's super interesting and will definitely impact, my practice. So what are some misconceptions that people have about Gestalt language processors, and how can we better educate them? Because I know that we've talked about this. There is definitely a gap between understanding GLPs, which I have as well, and especially between the BCBA community and the SLP community. There's definitely a gap. So how could we kind of bridge that and just educate people as a whole?
So I think the first problem is people think Gestalt language processing is new and all kind of woo-woo. But the research does date back to the 1970s with Barry Prezant, and there's still research going on today. So there's actually lots of research behind it to suggest that this is another natural way of language development. The other problem is it's not well known, even by recent graduates. My grad students I have now, they're learning nothing about this. So the best way is just to continue to talk about it like we're doing today.
Yeah, I feel like I've tried to look it up, and there's one course out there I think that everyone really recommends, and then some podcasts here and there. And I definitely know that this is something I need to educate myself with. And we've talked about this, but just for everyone listening, so this can be a hot topic in the education community if you aren't aware of. And I always say that as a BCBA that I'm working with everyone, and I need to be using the same language and having the understanding that other people have. Even if I might call something different in behavior analytical terms, there's usually a way to bridge that and understand where everyone's coming from so that we can work together as a team. And, that's always my goal. I always default to SLPs as the communication experts. So I think it's just really important for us to learn from each other and continue to grow. Anything else you want to add, Ashley, that you think that people need to know about these or where they can get more information?
I definitely agree with you, is working as a team between professions. There are tons of Instagram social influencers who are talking about Gestalt language processing. One of the biggest is Meaningful Speech. She has an amazing course for parents and for professionals. The child-led SLP is another great one, and she also has a smaller course.
Awesome. Sal, I will definitely link those, and I'm going to check them out too. I definitely know Meaningful Speech because she is the one that everyone told me to get her course.
Yes.
So thank you, Ashley. If anyone has questions, can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. They can find me on my Instagram at Ashley Bird or send me an email.
Awesome. And I will leave those for Ashley as well. Thank you so much for being here. And if you have any follow-up questions, let me know and we can even do this again. Thanks.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Autism Academy 360. We hope that you've gained some tips and motivation to fuel your week ahead.
Before you go, don't forget to hit that follow button on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. If you want to show support, head to Apple Podcasts and leave your rating and review.
Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and most importantly, stay connected. We'll catch you in the next episode.